Hello, everyone. Welcome back to American Roots Academy. I want to talk a little bit about Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani, however you pronounce his name, I don't know. He has won the election for New York City mayor, in case you don't know. He was running for New York City mayor and he won. And in case you don't know anything about him, he is a self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist of America, whose policy ideas include things such as rent freezes, which is a form of price control, free buses, free childcare, city-run grocery stores, and a $30 minimum wage. All of this is absolute insanity, right? It's mind-blowing to me how people refuse to learn from history and refuse to learn basic economic facts, because socialism, both will tell you that socialism does not work. All right, now I'm just going to briefly go through just a couple of these different ideas to talk about them from a historical perspective, but also a biblical perspective. How should we think about this from a biblical worldview? What does the Bible say about these kinds of things? So on and so forth. All right, so the first thing is price control. All right, we know from history, specifically what I'm thinking of is back in the Roman Empire, there was an edict passed called the Edict of Maximum Prices. And the result was exactly what most people today would expect. It was absolutely horrible. It resulted in mass shortages of goods and services. It resulted in black markets being created. It resulted in economic collapse. Because again, this is a socialist policy. It doesn't work. And eventually they had to do away with the policy because it was not working. Right? Additionally, what we see in the Bible, specifically what I'm thinking of is Amos chapter 4, verse 6, we see God condemn merchants creating artificial prices and measures because it's dishonest and it disrupts market value, and which causes all sorts of problems and everything like that. And so price control, not a good thing. That in combination with minimum wage is a lethal combination to businesses, because at that point, what you're doing is you are setting a cap, a limit on how much a business is allowed to make, while increasing how much money the business is required to spend to keep its doors open and to keep people hired, right? This is an absolutely deadly combination, and anyone who has run a business will be able to tell you this. Additionally, as far as minimum wage, it is completely unbiblical. We read in the New Testament, Jesus gives us a parable of a vineyard worker, and he's hiring people, and the guys who were hired first are complaining because the guys who were hired last were paid the same, and so they go to the owner, and he's like, hey, I have done you no wrong, right? I have paid you what you agreed to work for, and is it not lawful for me to do what I want with what is my own? Basically, what he's saying is minimum wage is unbiblical. That's not exactly what he's saying, but we see that principle in the story. What you are paying a person is supposed to be an agreed upon contract, a negotiation between employer and employee. A person agrees to do X amount of work in receiving X amount of wages, right? It's a contract, it's a negotiation. You don't see any outside forces or any governments forcing that business owner to pay a minimum amount to that employee. You don't see it in the Bible. And additionally, there are some other things. People say, oh, well, then without minimum wage, businesses are just, going to pay basically nothing, or pay less than what the person is worth, which is not necessarily true. And also the Bible warns against that as well. It says pay people fairly, right? So there is no minimum amount that you should pay. It's not biblical, but you should still pay people fairly. And again, it should be a private contract between employee and employer. City-owned grocery stores, it's a terrible idea. It's not going to work. Kansas City actually tried this. It's called KC Sunfresh, and it failed. They closed down because it didn't work. Again, History also shows that these kinds of policies do not work. City-run grocery stores, the Soviet Union, massive lines of people that people would wait in lines for several hours long just to maybe get some food that, you know, the grocery store is not even guaranteed to have. It's just an absolute nightmare. And additionally, just really what a lot of this is as well is government overreach. There are problems in New York, and what people are doing is they want the government to step in and fix those problems. But the problem there is that the government's not fixing the root problem. They're fixing or attempting to fix a symptom of the root problem, which is ultimately going to lead to more problems, and then it's just going to be a continued cycle. There are problems, government comes in, tries to fix it, more problems, people want the government to come in and fix those problems, and it's just a downward spiral. It's not going to work. The Bible warns against government overreach. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, Israel demands a king. And God warns them, basically saying, no, this is a bad idea. But Israel wants a king. They want to be like the other nations, and they want the king to go out and fight their battles. In other words, they want the government to provide for them. And God warns them, basically saying, this is a bad idea. Bad things are going to happen. You know, the kings are going to come in. They're going to, you know, take your stuff, your private property. They're going to seize your things, different things like that. And we see an example of this happen in the book of 1 Kings, with King Ahab and Naboth's vineyard. He wants the vineyard. Naboth says no. The king gets mad. His wife ends up having Naboth killed on behalf of the king, and so then the king takes his vineyard. All kinds of evil, all kinds of corruption, and it's just, it's a bad idea. And unfortunately, this is what New York is now going to become, New York City. People thought the problems in New York were bad as they are. Well, they are unfortunately about to get a lot worse because of these socialist policies that are supposedly going to be implemented by Mamdani. And, you know, I hate as much as I hate to think that socialism is in America, at the same time, though, it's kind of hard to feel bad for people who refuse to listen to history and economics and the people who have warned them multiple times over and over again that socialism is not going to work. And so part of me is just like, okay, you can go do what you want. You will be burned, but go be burned. You'll learn one way or another. So unfortunately, New York City is cooked. At this point, it's just going to get way worse. But so long story short, socialism bad, communism good. The Bible does not support socialist policies. It actually supports capitalist policies. And so I guess we'll see what happens in New York City going on into the future. So thank you for watching this quick video, and I will see you later. Take care.